Folks, the other day I made a short showing off my collection of N64 games, and today I thought I would rank them. Now, I am just ranking Nintendo 64 games that are currently in my collection. Not the top N64 games of all time, not even the top N64 games that I've previously played or that previously owned that were borrowed and never returned, but just the ones the 13 that I currently own. Now, if you want to know which games I'm ranking, you can check out the short. I'll put it in the link, and I'll put a link in the description below. But without further ado, let's get started. And at number 13, we have Pokemon Snap. Look, I don't hate this game. I don't even dislike it. Something had to be at the bottom, and this was it. More of a kid-friendly game. It's not too challenging as an adult. I think it might have been more fun as an open world game, but I can see why they just put you on the single track to make it more challenging. But there's not a lot of replay value. Once you get the perfect picture of each Pokemon, that's pretty much it. So that's why it's at the bottom of the games I currently have. At number 12, Bomberman Hero. Really liked this game as a kid. Doesn't quite hold up as well as I thought it would when I played it. It's a kid's game for darn sure. If I remember right, I read somewhere it was supposed to be a different game with a new character, but they didn't work quite confident, so they inserted Bomberman into it, which explains why it's not quite like other Bomberman games on the N64. And up next at number 11, the new Tetris. Now, I've said in previous videos, and I've commented on other people's videos, to me Tetris is an all-time 5 game regardless of genre. It's just a fun game to play. So why do I have the new Tetris on the N64 ranked so low? Well, I prefer to sit down in my recliner and pop it in a Game Boy and play it that way. The new Tetris is fine. The gameplay is fine. The music's pretty cool. It's got some different features to it than maybe the Game Boy version, but like I said, just personal preference. I prefer just to play it on an old school Game Boy or an old school NES, and the new Tetris really doesn't bring anything new to the table, so that's why I have it ranked as low as I do. And now, starting off the top 10, don't get mad at me, folks, but Mario Party. I'm being a bit nitpicky at this point, finding where to rank games above one another, and the reason, if it was Mario Party 2 or 3, it would be top 5 easily. The multiplayer is great. The reason I got Mario Party 1 ranked so low is those mini games where you had to spin the stick. I'm getting a sore palm just thinking about it. It was not one of Nintendo's best ideas. They did away with that in the sequels, thankfully. They realized they screwed up. But, Mario Party comes in at number 10. Up next, WCW NWO Revenge. I wanted to rank this game higher. I really did, folks. But here's the thing. It really hasn't stood the test of time very well. When it came out, I probably would have ranked it number 1. Of course, I was a big wrestling fan back then. I mean, the influence of the games, it was the first game to have wrestler entrances to music and pyro, as well as, the grappling system that it and its predecessor World Tour was used for multiple games, multiple generations. And this was the greatest wrestling game when it came out, and was for quite a few years after that. But it really didn't have any competition. WWF Warzone that came out a few months earlier was just atrocious with the controls. But anyway, Revenge comes in at number 9. Worth checking out, even if you're a wrestling fan or a retro gaming fan. In at number 8, we have Donkey Kong Country. Now, this is another one. When I was a kid, this would have been top 5. But one of the knacks against it the previous few years has been that it's a lot of backtracking and very repetitive. And I gotta say, after revisiting this game, they are right. There's a lot of backtracking. You complete World 1, you get everything, all the accomplishments done with Donkey and Diddy. A couple of levels later, you get the rest of the characters unlocked. You're going back to level 1, especially if you want to get all the blueprints to have more time to do the final level. And it just, the graphics are great, the controls are great. It just hasn't held up with the repetitiveness. Up next at number 7, we have Wave Race 64. Love this game. We're getting into my favorites. These are all pretty close. When I got my N64, it came with 2 games, Well, it didn't come with 2 games. I was present in 2 games. This was one of them. It's a fun racer. It's unique, a different style of racing. It's got easy tracks for beginners, and it's got more difficult tracks if you're a more experienced racer / gamer. Decent graphics. I mean, especially when you consider it was one of the launch titles. It still holds up to this day. Very enjoyable game. I recommend playing it. Coming in at number 6, before we get to the top 5, is Pokemon Stadium. Now, without the transfer pack, this game is not even, this would be at the bottom of the list. You got to play this game with the transfer pack, where you play the Pokemon Yellow, Red, or Blue, and then you can transfer the Pokemon you've trained and play against your friends. That makes the experience all the more better. If you don't have the transfer game, I don't have a Switch, but I can't see how this game would even be fun on the Switch, where you can't transfer your own Pokemon in. To me, that made the game. Anyway, it brings back a lot of memories. Still holds up, I believe. And getting into the top 5 now. At number 5, GoldenEye 007. Folks, this was the first-person shooter that started it all. Without GoldenEye, there probably isn't a Halo. I mean, the campaign is it's okay. What makes this game is the multiplayer. I mean, it was the first great first-person shooter multiplayer game. Didn't have the online experience, but, you know, all the first-person shooters that came after this, they owe it to GoldenEye. And I remember a lot of evenings with friends playing it, accusing each other of, quit looking at my screen. You know how that went before online. Overall, great game, fun experience. And anyway, speaking of multiplayer, up next, number 4, Super Smash Brothers. Yeah, this cost a lot of friendships. The reason the multiplayer made this game, the whole concept of, you know, Nintendo, all their mascots getting put into one game and just a fighting game. It was cool at the time. The original N64 version still holds up pretty decent, you know. I mean, the graphics aren't as good as even Melee on the GameCube or Brawl or Infinite that came after it, but it started it all. It's still fun. If you enjoy the later Smash Brothers games, give the original a try if you haven't. Highly recommend it. Before we get into the top 3, I'd like to talk about some of the games that didn't make the cut because I've never owned them / played them in a long time. Previous games that I've owned, Harvest Moon 64, took that to college with me, and somebody borrowed it and never returned it. As well as San Francisco Rush. That was a fun game. That was one of the first ones I got after I got my N64. My dad really enjoyed playing that one with me. And Mario Kart 64. Mario Kart 64 probably would have possibly taken Smash Brothers place. I'd have to replay it. But I remember it being a lot of fun. And then a couple games that I never owned or played even is Yoshi's Story and Star Wars Shadow of the Empire. Those are 2 good games that I always wanted to play but never did. I did play Rogue Squadron at one time. I thought it was all right, but it's been a long time since I was a kid. Anyway, on to the top 3 now. Number 3, Turok 2, Seeds of Evil. This was the first mature game that I ever played. It's fun. I love it. I played in the other day. It's too bad you can't, the controls are inverted and you can't switch them, so I got a little frustrated in that because I'm used to the other way around as I've gotten older. But it was a great game. The bloodshed, killing dinosaurs, plus it had a mix of action and puzzle solving that I thought was great even back then. You know, it's not made for younger audiences. It's rated M, and you pretty much got to be older to solve the puzzles, and the blood and gore isn't that bad. It'd probably be rated T for teen now, but I still have fond memories of it. I still think it's a good game. I even got the reboot on Xbox 360 a while back. That's fun as well. Not as good as this one, though. On to the top 2. I really went back and forth how I was going to do this, which one was my favorite. But at number 2 is Legends of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Oh, what's there to say that hasn't ever been said? I mean, it's one of the greatest of all time. The graphics still hold up pretty well. The targeting system, it took the Zelda franchise to a whole nother level. It already was popular. I still enjoy it. I like Majora's Mask better, but I've never owned it on N64. I got it on the sample disc for the GameCube. Is the only way I've played it, so can't put it on this list. It would probably be number one, to be honest with you. Majora's Mask would be. But Ocarina of Time is just slightly behind it. Still a great game. If you are younger and you've only played like Twilight Princess or Breath of the Wild, I highly recommend going back and playing Ocarina of Time, or even the 3DS remaster. Give it a shot. It holds up. And number one, well, you probably know, even if you didn't see the short of list of games, you probably figured it out by now, is Super Mario 64, the first 3D Mario game, unless you count Legend of the Seven Stars on SNES, but I really don't. This was a launch title. I mean, Nintendo hit the ground running with this system and this game, and the gameplay still holds up. Sometimes the camera angle isn't the best, but that's really the only knock on the game. Graphics hold up, controls hold up, the triple jumps, all the punches and jumping punches, everything you can do is just a blast on this game. So anyway, that's why it's still my favorite. A lot of fond childhood memories with it. Is it as good of a game as Ocarina of Time, as Majora's Mask, or even some of the others? Maybe not. And it can get repetitive like Donkey Kong, going back to the same levels. But overall, great gaming experience. It can be enjoyed by beginners, experts, kids, adults alike. And that's why it tops my list. I guess this just popped into my head. I've never had Banjo-Kazooie. I have it on Xbox 360. And Killer Instinct Gold. I played it, but never owned it. But Banjo-Kazooie would have been towards the top. Killer Instinct Gold would have been towards the bottom. I like the Super Nintendo version better. Anyway, that is my ranking and TED Talk of my collection of N64 games, as well as some input on other games that I've played in the past. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of my list in the comments below. Let me know if there's any games that I've talked about that I don't own that I should own. And have a good day. And Chaos in Southwest Nebraska, over and out.